Animal shelter, protection and housing. Purpose of lesson. At the end of the lesson you should know and understand the following content. The importance or reasons for shelter/housing. The different structures used for the shelter/housing of livestock. Intensive animal production system. The different intensive production systems, backyard systems, intensive/semi-intensive systems, and scrub systems, poultry/pigs/dairy production systems. The basic housing or shelter requirements/guidelines for an intensive production system, finishing shed, feed shed, cages, etc. The various tools for intensive housing systems, feeders, water supply, bedding and lighting, etc. Behavior of farm animals. The general behavioral patterns of the following farm animals under various conditions: large ruminants, cattle small ruminants, sheep intensive non-ruminants, pigs, and poultry. Handling of farm animals. The reasons/importance of handling farm animals. The effect of incorrect handling of the handling of farm animals, damage and effect. The basic guidelines when handling the following farm animals: large ruminants, cattle small ruminants, sheep intensive non-ruminants, pigs, and poultry. The different techniques/tools/aids used in the handling of farm animals. The basic guidelines/requirements for the transport/movement of farm animals from one farm to another/abattoirs. Introduction. Learning content that has been dealt with in previous grades must be in line with the current content that will be dealt with now, Grade 12 Term 1 Week 6, Animal Production. The purpose of this lesson is to cover the content related to animal shelter, protection and housing. Concepts and skills. Animal shelter, protection and housing. Reasons for shelter and housing in farming. Weather and climate protection. Protection against theft and predators. Control over conditions for optimal production. Maintaining biosecurity. Importance of shelter and housing in farming. Protection against natural elements. To maintain animal health and general well-being, especially when animals are young and do not have enough fat reserves to protect themselves. To keep animals safe, especially in areas with a high incidence of livestock theft or many predators. To protect valuable animals such as racehorses and breeding animals. For the practical execution of certain activities, such as milking cows and shearing sheep. Different types of shelters and housing structures. A farmer must provide animals with shade during hot weather and with heat during cold weather. Conditions. A shelter can be any construction that provides shade and protection from inclement weather such as rain and wind for animals roaming outside. The complexity of shelter and housing is determined by the farming system, type of animal, herd size, weather conditions, especially in areas where it snows most of the winter. Backyard systems. With a backyard system, the chickens are allowed to move around in the backyard of the farmhouse. It is advisable to fence off this area. If you only keep a few chickens for eggs and meat, you can simply have a fenced backyard. However, there are some disadvantages. The hens lay fewer eggs. The chickens can be killed by predators. Thieves can steal them. Disease organisms can multiply on the soil. Shelter and housing for extensive farming. Extensive farming usually uses shelter rather than housing. Shade can be provided by planting trees, building shelters, or erecting roofs near drinking places. A stable can provide shelter for cattle and sheep during very cold periods and protect the animals from cold and wet weather. Newborn animals struggle in extreme hot and cold conditions. In extensive farming, shelter for newborns may include beads. Dry bedding on the floors, such as straw, can also help keep animals warm. Shelter and housing for intensive farming. Intensive farming usually uses housing rather than simple shelter structures. The type of housing is determined by the farming system, for example, chicken houses, pig houses, horse stables, feedlot structures, canal dam systems or cage systems for fish and mollusks. Factors that farmers must take into account. Housing structures must be equipped for easy access to food and water, adequate temperature control, adequate ventilation, naked movement of animals, efficient disposal of waste. Cement floors are best for animals. Pigs and poultry are particularly affected by temperature changes, and farmers usually provide housing that regulates the microclimate per animal. Housing and tools for intensive animal production. The different types of intensive production systems include semi-intensive, free-running, considered semi-intensive, intensive, backyard systems. The system is used by people who have sufficient land available but do not want or cannot spend a lot of money or time on their animals. Animals can walk where they want, and a large part of the diet consists of grazing and the search for insects, plants, seeds, and so on. Formal housing is rarely provided, and animals have to more or less take care of themselves. Free-running and semi-intensive systems. Free-range systems are mostly applied to poultry, pigs, and dairy cows kept in intensive farming systems. The only requirement is that animals must be able to roam freely and not be confined to an enclosed or confined area. Animals classified as free-ranging in South Africa are often kept in semi-intensive production systems. These animals are kept in a barn with openings to secure camps that allow the animals free movement but provide protection from predators. The 5 freedoms. Freedom from hunger and thirst. Freedom from discomfort. Freedom from pain, injury or illness. Freedom to practice normal behavior. Freedom from fear and stress. Intensive production systems. These types of production systems are expensive, because suitable buildings have to be erected to house animals, and the environment is partially or fully controlled. Animals are kept under high population densities. Housing and shelter requirements for intensive production. The basic housing or shelter requirements for an intensive production set are determined by the type of animal, breed and size, and the key factors below. Temperature, ventilation, population density, temperature. All species have optimal temperatures at which they feel comfortable and produce optimally. If the environment is too hot, the animal's feed intake will decrease their breathing rate and water consumption and activities will decrease. If the environment is too cold, animals will consume more feed to maintain their internal body temperature, which will lead to a reduced feed conversion. Ventilation. Animals need a minimum amount of fresh air in a building to remove moisture vapors, carbon dioxide, ammonia, dust, bacteria and odors. Cold ventilating air should be directed so that it creates air circulation inside the barn or house, but does not flow directly over the animals. In a conventional, naturally ventilated barn or house, it usually involves a roof ventilation opening, along with ventilation holes in the walls. Ventilation provides fresh air to the animals, removes harmful gases and helps control temperatures and relative humidity inside the home. Population density. Optimal population density is very important in animal production, as it has a direct impact on both profitability and animal health and well-being. Too low a population density will not be profitable, as the available space is not optimally utilized for production. Excessive population density can lead to reduced feed intake, reduced growth rates and abnormal behaviors such as fighting, cannibalism, biting and biting. The amount of space required per animal depends on the type of animal, and increases as the animal increases in body weight and age. Floor construction and waste removal are important. Equipment and tools for intensive housing systems. Feeders. Water supply. Bedding. Lighting and time-keeping devices. Heating. Buckets. Brooms. Water pipes and watering cans. Vaccination tools. Weighing scales. Shuffle. Wheelbarrow. Harrow. Feeders and water supply equipment. There are many different feeders and water supply products, ranging from conventional feed and water troughs to electric feeders and nipple drinkers. Feeding trout must meet the following requirements. It should be easy to fill and clean. The animals must not be able to climb on it. The feed should be easily accessible, even if the trough is fairly empty. Feed wastage must be kept to a minimum. Bedding equipment and tools. Good bedding has certain requirements. Light in weight. Medium particle size. Highly absorbent. Dries quickly. Soft and compact. Low thermal transfer. Absorb the minimum atmospheric moisture. Produce the minimum amount of dust. Lighting equipment and tools. Animals must be provided with adequate lighting to stimulate feed intake. The regulation of light differs for different animals and farming systems. Except for poultry, most animals are kept according to normal daylight hours and intensities. In the case of broilers, the lighting equipment must therefore include a device that enables the manager of the house to reduce the light intensity as the chickens age. In places where the feeding and growth of broilers is controlled with varying light/dark programs, the lighting equipment must also have a timekeeping device that controls the light and dark periods. Heating equipment and tools. Heating equipment is especially needed for small piglets and young chicks. For chicks, heating equipment such as infrared lamps, gas incubators and paraffin lamp drum incubators are used. Little piglets can be heated by overhead infrared lamps, electric heating panels, underfloor heating, or by providing a lying area with adequate bedding. The heating requirements of piglets differ from those of the sow, so the heating area should be away from the sow. Behavior of farm animals. Behavior of large ruminants, cattle. General behavior. The following are characteristic. Has a ranking order. Poor depth perception. Sensitive hearing. Flight zone varies from 1.5 m to 30 m. Nutrition. Chewing takes about 3/4 as long as the grazing time. Cattle usually prefer to lie down while chewing. Cattle drink water 1 to 4 times a day. Cows that are milked also drink more water. Movement. Cattle have a herd instinct and will always move in the direction of the herd. Cattle have an equilibrium or balance point at the shoulder. If you are behind the balance point, the animal will move forward. Feces. The fecal behavior of cattle is not specific in frequency or limited to a certain area. Sexual behavior. As the cows approach estrus, it makes the bulls very excited and they follow the cows all the time, licking and constantly smelling her external genitals. Premating behavior includes scratching with the foot in the ground, snoring and the rest of his chin on the cross of the cow, and only then will mating take place. Mating is very short when compared to that of pigs and horses. The social rank order of bulls can influence their sexual behavior by having the most dominant bulls mate. The female animals become hyperactive when estrus begins. Maternal behavior. Suckling begins 2 to 5 hours after birth and the mother should stand. The calf aggressively bumps the mother's udder while suckling. Heifers that have had difficult calving tend to wait longer before standing still so that the calf can drink. Cows that have calved several times already stand still sooner. Cows with experience usually stand still after 1 minute after birth. The mother licks the calf to stimulate breathing, circulation, urination and defecation. Cattle are a hide species and hide their calves near the place of birth, and the offspring are eaten by the mother because it can attract predators. Abnormal behavior patterns. Poor maternal characteristics. This happens when the mother has had a long and difficult birth and does not have the strength to stand up for breastfeeding. Nymphomania. Such cows act like male animals by digging with their paws and jumping on other cows, but do not stand still when other cows want to jump on her. Bulistia syndrome. The general health and economic problem occurs especially in feedlots. They sexually attract their mates and then take turns following him. Illnesses. Cattle that are sick show abnormal behavior. Cattle that are healthy will wake up when they get up and make noises. General recommendations for the management and handling of bulls. You must have an unequal number of bulls in a herd. When two fight, one will be free to mate. You need to keep younger and older bulls separate. Regular visits by the caretaker are essential. Bulls that have worked hard for a month need to be replaced by a reserve team. You should never let a bull work if he has not yet recovered from an illness. When bulls are resting, they should be fed the same ration as before the mating season. You can group young bulls together without any problem in the summer. General recommendations for the management and handling of dairy cows. Cows should be milked at the same time every day. The animals must be chased into the milking parlor without unnecessary noise and excitement. Each cow must be in her own cage when she is milked. They should be milked by the same person who is preparing them. There should be no excessive noise during the milking process. A teat ointment should be applied immediately after the milking process. Behavior of small ruminants, sheep. General behavior. Sheep are defined as a prey species and therefore have a wide field of view. With just a small movement of the head, they can observe their entire environment. Sheep experience stress due to loud noises. There is a dominance ranking among rams, especially during mating season. Ewes tend to separate from the herd before lambing and will pick the highest point in the field. Nutrition. Sheep usually graze in the early morning and late afternoon until dusk when there is enough grazing. The rest of the day they will rest and chew. Movement. Sheep always move in a herd. They may move some distance apart, but will then form subgroups within the main herd. In extreme heat conditions, sheep will seek the shade of bushes or trees and stay close to water. Feces. There is no observable pattern of feces in sheep. Sexual behavior. Within a breed, there is no relationship between dominance and mating behavior. In an open environment there is sometimes conflict and a dominant ram can prevent others from mating, even if he has not necessarily covered the highest percentage of ewes. Competition of the ewes for a ram can also play a role, but there is no evidence. The smell of the ewes in estrus stimulates the rams, although it is the ewe that selects the ram and stays close to it. The male animal responds to the ewe's urine in estrus by sniffing to straighten its neck and pull its lip. Maternal behavior. Some ewes will stay inside the herd as their lamb while others will isolate them. Within seconds after birth, the ewe will aggressively lick the lamb and eat the offspring. The lamb must find the ewe's teats within 1 to 2 hours after birth, and it seems that visual cues play a big role in the successful finding of the teat. Managing the maternal bond between the ewe and the lamb in the industry is very important. Abnormal behavior patterns. The most important abnormal behavior has to do with birth behavior. Sometimes it happens that the ewe moves away from the lamb after birth or gives way if the lamb wants to drink. The behavior occurs especially in ewes with multiples, who find it difficult to find out there is more than one. The following are guidelines for catching and handling sheep. Catch the sheep. You must catch a sheep on the right hind leg above the heel/heel tendon. Guide the sheep. Place your left hand around the sheep's neck after catching the sheep. At the same time, hold the sheep with your right hand just above the tail. Pull the sheep down. To pull the sheep down, bend over the animal, hold it around the neck and grab the left leg. Lift the leg forward and upward. The animal will then be placed on its hindquarters as you are still holding it around its neck. Calculate a sheep's age. The approximate age of the sheep is determined according to the development of its permanent incisors. Behavior of intensive non-ruminants, pigs. General behavior. Pigs' behavior is a good indication of their comfort. Panting is an indication of heat stress. Pigs do not do well under extreme temperatures, only have sweat glands on the snout. Pigs, especially breeds with long, limp ears, have poor eyesight. They have a good sense of smell, are curious and like to chew on objects. They heard well and communicated with each other through snoring and screaming sounds. Pigs are easily stressed. Nutrition. Pigs kept in groups eat more than pigs kept individually. Movement. Pigs do not like to be moved, or left alone, and can be unpredictable when handled. Feces. Pigs choose specific places for defecation and urination. Despite their reputation, pigs are very clean animals as their housing systems give them the opportunity to live out their normal behavior patterns. The sleeping area should be kept as clean and dry as possible. When growing pigs have a floor area of less than 1 square meter, their defecation behavior becomes disorganized and uncontrolled. Sexual behavior. The courtship behavior only lasts for a short time if a bear is placed with a sow in estrus in a small cage. The sow plays a major role in meeting her mate, as the bear will be equally interested in a sow that is on heat and one that is not on heat. The bear will smell on the sow's sides, nose sides and vulva and make soft mating noises for 6 to 8 seconds. Form at his mouth and he will move his jaw back and forth as the sow shows off to him and bites his ears gently. If the sow is stationary, the bear will cover. Maternal behavior. Inside a cage, a sow will start 6 hours ahead of time to get her cage ready for birth. Inside a cage she will pick out a corner or cavity and prepare with straw, sawdust or any material. Inside a young crate, she will still show many of the symptoms to prepare herself for the birth process. And she will make the material around her together and take a comfortable position. After birth, each piglet will position itself with its snout so that it lies comfortably at a teat. The mother will constantly make grunting noises with between poses. The little piglets will massage the teats and udder, and this will be a sign for the sow to allow milk to flow. It will also help her to determine in the future amount of milk she should excrete. The more intense the massage of the udder, the more milk will be secreted with the next litter. Abnormal behavior patterns. Abnormal behaviors that are often experienced in pigs are the following: tail and bite over, cannibalism, behavioral problems during reproduction such as abnormal mating behavior and abnormal maternal traits, too much or too little to eat. Dominant relationships that keep other animals away from food and water. Abnormal misbehavior. The constant bump of resting pigs with their snout in the flank until the pig moves. It is usually experienced with pigs high up in the rankings, but all pigs do it sometimes. Basic guidelines for handling pigs. When foreign cows and young cows are put together, they often fight to establish a hierarchy of dominance. The best way to prevent fighting is to house dry sows in cages. Group the sow according to temperament. Groups of 5 to 6 would be recommended. If sow is kept outside, a concrete slab with steel liners can be used to solve the knotting problem. During driving time, individual feeding pens are useful when the sow is housed in groups. Provide enough exercise space. Poultry. Chickens have a panoramic vision of 300 degrees and a visibility of 26 degrees. Sight is an important sense and color vision is very important. Day-old chicks tend to peck at round and not rectangular objects. They also prefer to pick at small, 0.3 centimeters, solid objects. However, they will approach larger objects that are moving or making a rhythmic sound. Food selection is based on visual cues and immediate taste. Hearing is very important sense, with which they communicate with each other, and immediate communication within the herd takes place through signs such as attitude, performances, and sounds. The social organization differ in the different systems, but in cages and breeding barns there will always be a pitch order. It does not occur in broilers. When hens are placed in cages, there is a specific hierarchy formed by pecking and threats made by the animals. This usually happens a few weeks before the hens start laying at 6 months of age. The social order in broilers are of less importance as they are slaughtered at an age before social formation can take place. Laying hens have a complex interrelationship that includes social order, aggression, feeding behavior, and egg production. Sexual behavior. The male mating behaviors usually include the following: screaming and making noise, showing off, spreading wings to appear larger and emphasizing featheriness. Sexual behavior and domination are important in the management of mating. Maternal behavior. Maternal behavior was bred from commercial lines and does not play a major role in the intensive chicken industry. When they hatch with chicks, a bond is formed between the mother and the chicks, and they respond to her call for food, worried cries, and her soft sound to calm the chicks. Because chicken is very social and is born that way, they themselves are entertaining after hatching, but the parents play a very important protected role and teach the chicks to distinguish between edible and non-edible food. Basic guidelines for handling chickens. Announce yourself before entering the chicken coop. Move slowly. Keep large objects, such as bags of food, that you carry as close to the ground as possible. Catch the chickens only if necessary. Keep visitors and strangers out of the chicken coop. Follow a routine for feeding, watering, collecting eggs. Never put new chickens in the group. When chickens are moved to new camps, do so in the morning. Abnormal behavior patterns. Sometimes roosters will chase others, which can be a problem. Chickens in crates will sometimes show abnormal behaviors such as shaking their heads and biting feathers from other hens. Cannibalism may be a problem. Pretend mating sometimes takes place between male animals high up in the rankings and the lower down by them, seemingly performing mating behavior by stepping with the paws end, thereby showing that dominant relationships are important. Handling of farm animals. On explanation. Body condition score to monitor whether an animal gains weight or loses weight during certain production phases. Egg collection. The sooner eggs are collected after they are laid, the better the internal quality of the egg. Mixing of sheep. The removal of wool around the vulva and anus areas, so that dirty, wet wool does not attract moths. Deworming. Treating animals with liquid dewormers to get rid of internal parasites. Dip to get rid of external parasites. Attaching of ear tags to put a marker in an animal's ear for identification purposes. Foot bath. Treatment of animals with medication to treat foot ailments. Cutting of hooves. Hooves of animals that mostly graze on green pasture are cut because the hooves do not run off naturally. Transport. To transport animals over a distance from one area to another in an animal truck, such as a truck. Milk from cows and goats. To obtain milk from the udders of milk-producing animals for human consumption. Pregnancy tests. To test if a female animal has a fetus in her uterus. Shearing of sheep. Wool removal. Sorting wool. To classify wool into the categories according to which it is sold. Selection. To classify animals according to breeding standards and sort them into suitable production groups. Treatment. The administration of medication or care to a sick or injured animal. Ultrasound scanner. To determine the amount of offspring in the uterus of a female animal during pregnancy. Vaccination. Administration of a pathogen to an animal so that the body of the animal can produce antibodies to fight the pathogen as it enters the body. Disease prevention. Weighing. Determine the weight of the animal. General guidelines to consider when handling animals. Most animals are highly protective of their newborns. Animals experience and show typical signs of fear, aggression, and contentment. Handlers should observe warning signs such as ears that are upright or flattened, a tail that is upright, back hair that is upright, bare teeth, chopping of the foot on the ground, and snoring sounds. Always be aware of the environment and possible risks. Even before animals are slaughtered, they must be handled with care, as meat quality is affected by stress, handling errors, to arrive at an animal from its blind spot, to make sudden, unexpected movements or noise, screaming at animals when chased, to beat animals, to place foreign animals together in the same area, to catch sheep on their wool. General handling guidelines use an easily recognizable sign. Use an easily recognizable sign, such as a whistle. Avoid loud noises and be patient. Move slowly and noticeably around a herd or herd of animals. Sheep and cattle are herd animals and it is easier to handle them as a group. Cattle and horses cannot see directly behind them, so sudden movement will startle them. Always approach a horse from the left and the front, if possible. Never use a protest stick on an animal if it can go nowhere. If the animal has to go somewhere, it must be given space to go there. Do not chase animals too fast. Let the animals determine the pace. There should always be an escape route. Try not to enter large, enclosed areas with large animals. An animal's balance point is at the shoulder. All animal species move forward when the handler is behind the balance point. Be very careful with animals you are not familiar with. Pregnant animals should always be moved as calmly as possible to reduce stress. Handling of large ruminants, cattle. Work with calves in an area isolated from the cow. Always work with cattle from in front of the hip area. Give dairy cattle a moment to get used to a new environment. It is better to move cattle from the edge of the flight zone. Cattle love light and always move towards the light. Handling of small ruminants, sheep. Always approach a sheep calmly and slowly. A flock of sheep can always be driven from behind. Do not allow the herd to split. Sheep are easily moved with the help of a sheepdog. Sheep can be taught to respond to a verbal command. If you need to catch an individual sheep, the best way is to quietly chase the sheep into a small cage. Do not catch or grab sheep by their wool. Handling of intensive non-ruminants, pigs. Pigs do not like to be alone, therefore it is better to move pigs in groups. Be patient when moving pigs. They are curious. Rough and aggressive handling will make pigs panic. If pigs are moving, they should only be given one direction in which they can move. Handling of poultry. When handling chickens, do not chase and grab them, as this can cause stress. Move chickens calmly in a small group. To pick up a chicken, you need to wrap your hands around the body of the chicken. It is important to get a good grip on the chicken so that it feels safe. Hold the legs. Do not hold bottom up. Techniques for handling farm animals: chasing, spur, capture, carry, obstruction of sight, immobilization. Tie the legs of an animal. Tools for handling farm animals: rope, stick, prodder, nose ring, halter, immobilizer. Tools for the treatment of farm animals: castration pliers, dehorning bolt, dosing rifle, knife, tail docking gaspleer, sheep shears, hoof clipper and file, ear tag and tattoo pliers. Management systems: collection pen, catch pen, crush pen, sorting gate, neck clamp, tilt clamps, scale, RFID animal handling systems. Guidelines for the movement or transport of farm animals. Animals should not be transported in a way that causes injury or suffering. Transport times must be kept to a minimum. Animals must be ready to travel. People who handle animals need to be trained and competent. Vehicles must have sufficient floor space and height for the animals. The vehicle and the loading and unloading facilities must be designed, built and maintained in such a way as to avoid injuries and ensure the safety of animals. Water, feed and rest must be provided to animals that are transported over long distances. Animals are common when transported with animals they know. Animals of different sizes and ages are not separated. Adequate ventilation when moving and standing still. Exhaust gas protection, as the gases cause stress to the animals. Provision to be able to inspect all the animals at floor level. Free-flowing air above the animals. Facility to load animals in safe density in multi-level vehicles. Activity/assessment. Teachers must work out activities on the given content and provide them to the learners. Answer the relevant questions in your answer series in your homework or exercise book. Page 43, Question 1. 63. Learners can also use the following sources of information to do activities. Relevant Grade 12 textbooks. Explore Textbook Grade 12. Mind the Gap Agricultural Sciences Grade 12. Pass Agricultural Science Grade 12. Previous grade November 12th examination papers. Consolidation. The lesson covers the latest content as prescribed by the CAPS document. Values. By studying this lesson, you should be able to content related to animal shelter, protection and housing to know and understand. Learners must understand what is covered in the content in order to be able to answer questions successfully and use the necessary skills. Learners will be able to use the knowledge and skills as a basis for progress towards animal production. In Week 8.
Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more future educational videos.